Maureen is very interested in the outdoors, volunteering at Rocky Mountain National Park. She reads and evaluates articles pertaining to environmental issues or environmental causes. Today, Maureen will review a written article trying to pass for journalism. Her goal will be to inspire all to research information rather than just accept the written word. The title of Maureen's speech is Not Just a Good Job, Not Just a Job, Do a Good Job. Maureen Denig, not just a job, do a good job.
You're as confused as I am. Good morning. Thank you for allowing me to make this speech presentation today. I love my dog. On weekends, she gets me up early. So I'm able to fix the cup of tea and then go upstairs to the computer to read the local newspaper, the Times-Call. I skim through because it's electronic, hit onto some of the titles, keep going. My main goal is to read Dear Abby and find out whose life is worse than mine, and to read the cartoons. Getting between the front page and the last page, somewhere buried in the back, there was an article about wolves in Minnesota. So I clicked on it to enlarge it. My objective when I read the newspaper is to gather information that's not currently known to me. It's outside my immediate scope. So if something is happening across the world, I expect the article that I read to have been researched and presented in a non-partisan presentation. I know that's naive. But nonetheless, that's what I'm looking for. So what should be the object of newspapers, radio, and television stations? I presume that those entities present researched information from the outside world. What is a journalist? A question that the United States Senate took under consideration. A bill approved September 12th by the U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee states that a journalist is closer in spirit to an activity rather than a job. That debate was trying to identify freedom of the press issues, not including bloggers. But regardless, the people agreed that journalism has turned into an activity. I am now a journalist. I have engaged in that activity. Buried in the back section of the first section of the Times-Call was an article entitled, Changing Climate Isolates Minnesota Wolf Population. As I had read earlier, I am a volunteer at Rocky Mountain National Park throughout the summer. There have been talks, but not a discussion, about reintroducing wolves to Rocky Mountain National Park because they can help enliven the park and bring new vegetation as well as new other animals in, and they can offset some that have gotten out of control. So this article caught my attention. The article stated, and I quote, on an icy island wilderness near the tip of Minnesota, a female gray wolf's demise has added to the debate about whether authorities should try to save the wolves of Isle Royale National Park. The first thing I noticed was the reference to climate change and the rarity of ice bridges on Lake Superior. And I stopped and I thought, about 2-3 weeks ago, I was part of a snowshoe expedition that left the senior center, and we went up to Peaceful Valley. I was one of the leaders of the group because I am a senior citizen. The topic in the back of the bus had to do with the Great Lakes and their being frozen, and how this was such a phenomenon that small towns in the upper Midwest were now open in the winter because it became a booming activity drawing people. The lakes were so frozen you could walk out and see these caves of stalactite presentations that you couldn't see any other time. And it happens maybe every 50, 75 years. This is one of those years. So with that in the back of my mind, reading this, I thought, Isn't that strange that he's alleging that because of climate change, the ice bridges between the land and the island where this wolf normally resides didn't exist? The poor female wolf died lonely and isolated. They can't find a cause, so it must have been from a broken heart. Well, I decided to do some research on that. And what I found was a little astounding. Climate change has not warmed the lake. Through the age of technology, I was able to, in a matter of 45 minutes, debunk this entire article. Here's what I found in my research. There is an Isle Royale National Park. It's located, and I apologize to those of Indian heritage, Keweenaw Peninsula in northwest Michigan, not Minnesota. So perhaps the reporter was caught off guard because he doesn't know the abbreviation for states, Michigan MI, Minnesota MN, and he just thought, well, it must be from Minnesota. The peninsula in Michigan is considered part of Michigan's Upper Peninsula, and its nickname is Top of the World. Very easy to find through research. As of February 12th, and this article refers to the poor wolf who was found February 8th, as of February 12th, Lake Superior had 87% of the lake covered in ice. The ice bridge did exist. According to the website for the park, the Natural Resources Chief, Paul Brown, there had been 24 wolves on the island in 2008. But there is always a natural fluctuation. To quote Mr. Brown, the population of wolves, and for that matter, all wildlife on the island, fluctuates over time. It is an island ecosystem, and so things are fairly dynamic. The article implies that because there were no ice bridges, the wolf died all along. And according to the resource officer, the wolf crossed the icy bridge and escaped to the mainland, where it was found dead. So it didn't die on the island. It walked into town. He was as bored in town as she was on the island. The writer of the article quotes a Michael Nelson, an Oregon State University professor who specializes in environmental ethics and philosophy. And I am clutching my hands right now to keep some of the rage that engulfed me this morning and caused me to write this. This person who is so ethical and philosophical is quoted as saying, to preserve a healthy ecosystem with climate change, we at times are going to have to intervene. And that's a hard thing to wrap our heads around. Well, there isn't any climate change occurring at this juncture, because from past research, climate change, according to the United Nations Agenda 21, infers, and they imply, because they don't have the adequate research for this, that from the top down it will become warmer. And so our growing seasons will become longer. Instead of 2, we'll have 3. Instead of all the snow that we've been having, we will have rain, but our precipitation measurements will stay the same. So there are some good things and bad things. But in this particular case, the cold is staying right where it should be. It's coming down and freezing the Great Lakes. It's providing transportation means for these animals to move around and find food if they so desire. The most astonishing part I found about this article had to do with the writer of the article. The truth of this story is that this writer, Parish Dave, actually does work for the Los Angeles Times. That is the one speck of truth in this article. Checking him out on the internet, I found out his job. He's a sports writer. That really qualifies being able to put forward this information. So the Clippers and the Lakers are so boring he has to make up stories he finds elsewhere? This particular year can be game-changing relating to political offices. The people who presently in charge are trying their best to push the fallacy of climate change upon us, and particularly affecting our bottom line, our wallets. This is just one more journalistic debacle that supports the premise, but it falls flat on its face when researched. Researching is something a few of us will ever do. We just read the story and move along. Today, I implore you, take nothing at face value. Journalism is indeed an activity. Become active. Research your articles and respond back with correct information. It won't necessarily be sensationalistic, but it will be true. Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen.